welcome to the last part of the driver test coding ASMR series, where I make a little driving test app in which you are a driver, and based on how you drive, will tell you if you pass or fail a driving test. So in this part, I'll be making JUnit tests, at least some of them, for this program. So if in case you did not watch the previous parts, I am going to run this program. And let's see how it is. Right now, this is how it works. So, your name. So basically, I set the name of my driver, the age, and the car. And then it asks you some questions. You driving in a different zone. I do 43. I do, let's say 76, because I sped a little and I drove 30 here. And how many blind spots? I missed 2 blind spots, and then it's a sunny weather. And was my instructor strict? No. And you pass. And let's see if I do one more run. My name, John. Let's say this guy, he drives 660, and then 55, and then 30, and he missed 4 blind spots, so like he drove pretty roughly, so, and not as strict. And that guy failed because at one point he sped so much. Okay, so that's a rundown of the program. If you could pause, 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 you could pause. If you want to see some info. Okay. So let's begin. So here goes the main topic of this video. So in this class, this is basically which is a class where you make JUnit test cases for a driver and driving tests. So a unit test is where you test little bits of functionality in your Java code. That's what it is. If you just a little fact maybe could help you with your tingles, it's just some random facts. But that's what a JUnit test case is. A unit test in programming is basically just testing little bits of code to make sure these little parts are functioning well as testing lots of paths and outcomes and scenarios that get you to different outcomes and expecting what you want it to be. So in this case, I'm making unit tests on driver tests. It is named like that because I am testing my driver test functionality. So what I'm going to test on is testing different drivers on how they drive and setting up different tests cases and in different scenarios and outcomes, all of the possible outcomes. Well, not all, but at least quite a few for this video. So I'm going to test one thing at a time. So in this case, I'm going to test a case where a driver pass as usual and drives at perfect speed. So, by the way, this unit test is like testing a lot of things. In this case, I could test a driver passes because he drove perfectly. You also have to test a pass where the driver sped a little bit, that you still pass because you don't speed too much. So let's do one thing at a time. So let's try testing a perfect driver that drove without any errors. So let's say that the driver this time I'm just gonna set some hard code, some names here. This is just some like repeated names because I'm going to always name my driver Kyle, 23, in Civic. And so I'm just gonna put that hard-coded name, age, and car. I mean hard-coded here, so I don't have to rename it. I don't have to put my name over and over and again and my age over and over again. And the car. And what should I put? Let's say I did 50, 40, and 30 for the top speeds. Like that. And if you recall, this array is the speeds that I drove, where each value represents the speed that I drove in each zone. And the last parameter is missed blind spots. So let's say that I missed no blind spots whatsoever. And let's make a driver test. Test equals new driver test. And I pass in a new int array where 50, 40, and 30 are the speed zones. And this parameter is a boolean, which is true false. It describes whether the tester is strict or not. If he's strict, he or she is strict, that means you are more likely to fail if you speed up, for example, by a certain amount. And then the last parameter is the weather. Like that. Sunny. Like that. And I am going to assert that I passed because this driver passed with no errors. Assert true. Okay. Driver and dot driver passed. Driver that no. Test dot evaluate driver and driver. This is where I call the evaluate driver method, which returns true or false, where true is I pass and false is that I fail. And this method here represents that I expect it to be true, which is a pass. And then this means that I call evaluate driver, which returns true or false. And I assert it to be true, expect that to be true because he drove perfectly in every zone, no strict instructor, and sunny, and he missed no blind spots. So I'm going to run this test case here, and I'm going to just see that I passed. And as you can see, there's a check mark. There's a check mark. There's a check mark. There's a check mark. And that means that my test case passed. And am I done? No. I still have a lot of test cases to work on. So Okay. Okay. So this guy passed. Let's do another one. So let's test another case where I test a passing driver. Sped. Let's just test that I sped up a lot. I speed up a lot. And you happen to not speed enough that you will fail. That guarantees you'll fail. So let's say that I speed up to around 10 over. But you still pass. So I'm going to not name passing driver, but say passing, because passing is whatever it is, just to make my method name short. And same name, same age, same car. And instead of 50, let's say that I drove 60 instead. And I missed no blind spots. And for the driving test, it's going to be the same routes, just to test that I drove 10 over, which is the maximum threshold. Remember that there's a gray area. There's a certain amount of speed. You can go 10 over and still pass. And I happen to fail over because I failed. And let's see. Loud speed buffer is 10. But if it's greater or equal, there you go. So if I go 10 and over, I'll fail. So it has to be that I go 9 over. But so that means that my test case failed, because 10 and over would trigger this if, and it would return false. So one fix is I did this, so I don't include 10 over. So that means if I go 11 and over, I will fail. And there we go. I'm going to now rerun it, and I'll pass the test. Okay. Let's do another test case. Let's do another scenario where I drive. Let's say under 10. So I go 10 under the limit on a speed zone. For this case, I'll still pass. And I happen to not account for if you go too slow, you'll fail, but it's not. It should be reasonable. It's just not too realistic. It only will trigger a fail if you pass, if you speed up by a certain amount. Okay. So for the next two test cases, I'm going to only type and explain a bit later. could not control the airplane. With that out of the way, so I now cover test cases where I missed a few blind spots. So I have a case where I missed the maximum amount of blind spots. You're allowed to miss 4 if your instructor's not strict. And I happen to still pass, which is a yay. But if you fail, if you miss 5 blind spots, you're expected to fail, which is why I put asserts false. Is what I want. Okay. So now let's test some more cases where I fail. So let's do a test case where I fail. Let's test a failing test. Test fail. Test a failing test. Perfect, but test failing, but you ran a stop sign. So let's say that I drive perfectly, except that set car crashed. So let's say set ran stop sign. So that means that I ran a stop sign, and that means that I failed here. So even though I drive perfectly, let's put it 0 for blind spots. I missed that. That means you failed. So there's a lot of test cases to cover. So this is gonna take a while. Let's try something out. Let's say that I ran red light. Again, I drove perfectly, except that you ran a red light. And that means that I'll fail because of that. And the no-brainer case, where you perfectly drive, but you happen to be unfortunate that you crash your car. Set car crashed. So you crashed a car, and that means you instantly fail because of that. So with that out of the way, that those cases are covered. Now let's test some more failing tests. So let's test that I failed because I sped too much. $11 over. So let's say that instead on the 30 zone I drove 41. And that means that I failed on this case. Remember that the typical test, you could go 50 in the first zone, 40 in the second zone, 30 on the third zone. And the strict instructor is false. So, and that means here, I still failed. I'll fail because I go 11 over. So, now, let's test some more cases. Let's test if the weather is rainy. Let's test something like that. So, let's say that I pass. Let's test that I pass rainy weather. On a typical test, let's say that that the weather is rainy. And I guess here, because of the rain, you could only go 5 below the typical zone. So if it's a 50 zone, you could go up. The speed zones will be changed to something like 40%, 45, or 35 and 25. But let's say that I go 55 in this. And this are true, meaning I expect to pass. basically. And this test case. Assert true is, meaning it's a call that you expect this to pass. However, I failed because of that. I failed here because the weather is rainy and I drove 5 over. So going back to the driving test, if the weather is rainy, the speed will be 5. In the allowed speeds. Okay. And the speed here, degrees of speed is 5. So that means that if I go here. Oh yeah. This fails because I still forgot to change 40 here. And even though I went 10 over here in the third zone, I still failed, which is why it's rainy. But here, this saying that I'll pass because even though I did 55 and 50, that means that I have to, because it's rainy, 50 will change to a 45, basically. But I still failed here because of this. Something else happened to be that here, which is not what I want. Maybe if I did 54, I would still pass. Let's see. No. Oh yeah. Where was my case here? I forgot to remove this method. How stupid am I? Okay. I'll pass here. Let's say here, and if I do 55 over, 5 over, 55 more than 45, I will still pass, which is good. Okay. And let's do another test case. So here I test. 4 blind spots missed, I will still pass. Because I didn't check. I didn't make it that if it rains it changes how many blind spots it can miss, so let's do a test case where it is snowy. Or let's first test that I failed. Failed rainy weather. 6 over posted. Keep in mind that 6 over 50 doesn't mean that I will pass in this case because of rain. Oh, I should have changed it assert false because I expect it to be a failing test. Assert false. And this will be failing because I drove more than 50, but technically it's now 45 because, yeah. Some more blip 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 stuff. Okay. Now. To be honest, right here, doing unit tests are pretty much annoying, but they are also really helpful in our long run because when we develop apps or software or something, we have to make sure that each individual part of code runs as intended. Let's say that this is not a driving test related, but if I have like a function that returns the mortgage payment, you want to make sure that the payment is, you get the expected amount of payment depending on how many years or something it is, or if you are eligible to vote. If you're 18, you want to make sure that returns true if you're 18, or false if it's not 18. So these are just like test cases or something, but we are testing multiple functionality, and you want to also do some cases where on every situation, for example, if you're 18 or under 18, for instance, or from a method of a method of a method, you want to make sure that it expects the same, expect the way your answer that you want to be or something, the output. So I am going to now test something. I'm going to now test, let's say that I test, let's say if it's snowy or something. I think there was snow for here. Yeah, if it's rainy or snowy, it will always decrease the speed by 5. So I think that's it for weather. Now here's the fun part. I'm going to now test the same thing, but with a strict instructor. So I'm going to go back to my first one. I am going to now test a passing, but let's change the instructor a bit. Let's switch instructors. No errors, but strict instructor. If the instructor is strict, so let's do true. Oops. Okay, so here it's different. The same thing, ideal driver, perfect driver, but my instructor is strict, so I passed because I drove perfectly with a true strict instructor, and sunny weather as always. So let's do another case. Here, if my instructor is strict, I can drive over. If I drive 5 over the limit, let's say drove 45 instead of 40, I'll still pass. But here, if I let's say in this case here, if I drive 6 over, I'll fail because my instructor is strict. I can only go 5 over the limit, which is the allowed speed buffer. And the difference between a strict instructor and non-strict instructor, the key difference, or one of them, is how many is the speed buffer to how over it could go over the limit. So here at one point I did 46 in a 40 zone, which is 5 over. Typically I would still pass if my instructor is strict, but in this case, since my instructor is true and mean, I'll fail. Oh, I forgot to assert false here. Because I forgot to set it so I expect this case to be a false or fail. Okay, that is going to be fixed. I'm like testing the same case, it's just the difference is the instructor. Okay. Another key difference is that I could only miss a fewer blind spots if I remember. Forgot to put no errors. Alright, here. Yeah, like that. Test failing. Okay. So if I fail here, no. Let's do passing here. Test passing, missed 2 blind spots. So here, I drive perfectly, but I miss 2 blind spots. So if I recall, I can only miss 2 blind spots, and I'll still pass. So I run it, and even though my instructor is strict, I miss 2 blind spots, which is the maximum. I pass. But, however, the next test case here, if I miss 1 more blind spot, 4 is too much, 3 blind spots, I expect it to be a fail. And I run my test case, and boom, I expect it to fail, but I expect my test case to pass my unit test. It's so ironic that it's kind of confusing. I mean, that's not ironic, it's kind of confusing that you are expecting your driver to fail, but your test kind of pass because you want this unit test in the programming sense to pass, but you want to expect that your driver fails because of that. So like you want to expect that your driver fails, which is the outcome of this code, of this situation in this code, and then if it fails, if it's what you expect, your unit test will pass. So alright, now what's left? What things I should do to test the case? I guess these are the only factors that determine if your instructor is strict. In the other case where the weather matters, the what it matters is that if it's rainy, it just decreases your posted speed by that. I'm just going to test one case where it snows. Why not? To cover everything almost. And that will be the last few unit tests. Test passing. Strict. Snowy. Christmas. No. Snowy, but you happen to go 5 over, let's say, or something like at the speed limit, let's say. So I put at posted because here you're driving 50, which I will not change, because if it would be snowing, keep in mind that even though the posted limits here are 50, 40, and 30, for example 50, the speed will technically be 40, which you're allowed to, because if it will be snowing, you're supposed to go, let's say, 5 under. So I did not change it, so technically I'll be going 5 over because I have to drive 45 in snowy conditions. So like that. Here I will be passing because I drive technically 5 over. And I miss no blind spots in here, so almost forgot to check that. And I happen to pass still. But let's say that I drive 51 instead of 50, which technically means 6 over 50 minus 5 because of the snow. And the instructor is strict, so I can only go 5 over, which is the limit, which is the buffer. let's say 1 over posted. Because my instructor's strict, he will fail me. So assert false and snowy, and here my unit tests pass, not the driver. Alright, there's a lot of copied code, but this is what I usually encountered for unit tests. So I'm going to run all these cases here, and all of them pass. So my program kind of works functionally. I could have tested here a driver itself, or I tested getters and setters, and the constructor where you create a new driver. I could have also tested that the name is initialized correctly, and the car is driven correctly, and the array is correctly set. As well as the driver test, I could make sure that the allowed speed buffer is what it is, allowed blind spots, allowed speeds, allowed speed zones. But I'm just gonna call this a video and conclude my driving test program series ASMR. So if you enjoyed this video, if you gotten your tingles, please drop a like. I hope this gives you the best of your tingles. Even though you may not know too much on programming, you can still follow along as I type and whisper for your tingles, just like random sounds or videos, whatever topic. So in the next video, I plan to make another Backrooms video where I cover some more levels of the Backrooms. Stay tuned for the next video. Peace out.